Well, my testimony is a little bit different because I became a Christian when I was probably 3.5, 4. I was born in an ex-prisoner of war camp. The council bought all the prisoner of war camp off the army, and then they turned them into houses. So it was only a thin layer of asbestos between us and the outside world. And there was a toilet block, and seeing there was 46 little houses there, a toilet block with 3 toilets in was a bit chaotic, to say the least. Well, my dad, he worked for a big company, building company, and every year they would send everybody on a coach trip. And this one year we went down to Bournemouth. Well, when we was there, I was eating sandwiches and I was eating a lot of sand as well, apparently, as you do when you're very small, only about 2.5. And I contracted TB meningitis and double pneumonia. The GP didn't pick it up early enough until after I became totally unconscious and rigid. And then he flipped. So I spent 16 months in hospital in Am Green, in the other side of Bristol. And that was another American ex-hospital originally in the Second World War. And when I was there, we was all in little cubicles, and there was just me and another little girl. And she was blind, deaf, and dumb from birth. And nobody did ever come and see her. Her parents didn't come and see her at all. And I don't know whether you've ever seen the picture of the fairest one in the garden, but that was how she looked. She had long blonde hair, and the daytime nurses would come along to feed her and snatch her head back while pulling her hair and then forcing the spoon down her throat. So she would cry and they would just chuck her back in the cot. And at night they used to push you outside in the bad weather because they said cold killed the germs. So I used to push my cot to hers, and we used to sleep together at night outside. Till in the end they had to send some carpenters up to put a lid on my cot because I kept getting in with her and she was still in a bad state. So, and in that time, when I was unconscious for 7 weeks, my mum had an abortion. And it was quite far on. She was 6 months. And I wondered why my dad had it in for me for all my time I was small. And if he had a bad day at work, he would come over and he'd just pitch into me. And till in the end, I just thought, well, this is how it's going to be all the rest of my life. And then when I started work, because I was in the early 60s, there was a lot of people on building sites that was ex-army. And there was this one bloke, and he was an ex-commando. So he gave me some basic training, which is illegal, really. And he said to me, he said, if anybody ever sets into you again, he said, you can stop it. So one day, Dad set into me, and I had a go. As it says, the worm will turn eventually if you keep on getting done. So me and Dad had a set to. And from that day on, it sort of stopped. But, you know, I was 47 when I found that out. And all that time, none of the family had ever thought about telling me why. And, you know, before I got married, I started working for a big firm, and they used to do all church work. And one day we was on this church, and I was told to go up the steeple to pick someone up. So I went up, and the scaffold moved underneath me, and I ended up sliding down a slate roof on my back, which didn't do my body a lot of good. And I was told I'd made a big mess of the roof. And I said, well, you want to have a look at my back, really? But that's how they was then. You know, they had no sympathy for you. But, you know, And then I got married, and we had 3 children. But the enemy gets in. And if you're not aware of the enemy getting in, and quite often it's with people from within the family or church family. Because how our marriage fell apart was I was told that I was going to end up in a wheelchair. Because I had one accident off the steeple, and then I hit a swimming pool floor from a high diving board. And they said to me, you're going to end up in a wheelchair before you're 40. And that was the end of it for the wife. She said, I can't live with a paraplegic. And I said, well, I ain't going to get to that stage. And she said, well, the consultant said you will. I said, yeah, but I said, we haven't got to take ownership of it. Because once you take ownership of it, you got it. You know, I've known people that go on the internet and they look up all the symptoms of what they're going to have, and they got like a hit list. They tick them off as they come in. And you think, you're owning this. And, you know, when I moved in the forest, people said to me, oh, you've got to be here a long time before you're accepted. Well, I knew that because one of my uncles had been down here for 47 years and he was still wasn't accepted, really. But as I said to them, I find it difficult to make relationships. This is why I'm a bit standoffish. People say to me, oh, one vicar said to me, of course, he said, you're too big, that's why people don't come to you and talk to you. I said, well, what do you want me to do? Have my legs amputated at my knees? And he said, oh, well, he said, it's just your size. I said, well, I can't help that. But this is how people go around trying to make you feel and belittling you, making you feel that you're inferior. But with all this gone on, and at school, the head teacher, when I didn't start school till I was 9, and the head teacher took me out in front of the whole assembly and said to stay away from me because I had a brain problem. So she automatically labelled me as mental. So all my school life, everybody avoided me as though I had the plague. And she said, you're too big. So I didn't start till I was 9. Because when I was small, because of all the drugs I'd had, I'd got quite big. So, you know, and then when I got to the secondary school, I was used as a guinea pig. They put me in an A stream when I couldn't even read English and expected me to do French and Latin. And, you know, one teacher put on my report that I was a waste of education and money. But with all that, you've still got to keep your faith. And sometimes it's hard when you're on your own. Because quite often, the people that you think you can rely on are the ones that leave a sinking ship. They're the ones that you left behind. But, you know, I know when I was about 20, people kept saying to me, oh, well, Lorraine, she went to hell because she was a child. And I just couldn't buy that in, really. So I knew a man in Bath that had the gift of discernment. So I went down to him and I said, look, people keep telling me that this girl that I shared 16 months with has gone to hell. And he said, no. He said, don't work like that. He said, children that can't talk or do that, you know, even ordinary children that can't make their own mind up, he said, they don't go to hell. He said, why did Jesus say, suffer the little children to come unto me? So I know that me and Lorraine are going to meet again when I pass on. And she is 100% now. She can see, she can talk. She called out to me and said she was waiting for me when we was in deep prayer. And, you know, you've got such a job to get some Christians. They're so indoctrined in how they think that you can't get them to think out of the box. We all got to be prepared to be moved by the Spirit. Because if we're moved by people, then we're dead. We got to have that internal life. You know, when I come out of the coma, an evangelist had prayed for me for 18 hours solid that day. And the doctors at Am Green had to put down on the paperwork God's intervention because they had no other explanation for it. As far as they was concerned, I was clinically brain dead. They was going to shut everything down at 4 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I come out of it at 4 o'clock, and by 6 o'clock I was sat up in bed eating Smarties. And the doctor said, there's no other explanation for this than God's intervention. So, sometimes the medical people have to admit that there is a God, because they can't explain it any other way. So my testimony is a testimony of relying on God and knowing that there is strength, even if you're on your own. Because it says, doesn't it, we are surrounded by angels all the time. And that's what we got to hang on to. If we're feeling in a dark, lonely place, I've been down to Clifton Suspension Bridge several times to throw myself off because I've been in bad places. But every time I've been pulled back from the edge. And that is only God keeping me for something further down the line that's going to be there for somebody else. And that's how we got to be. We got to be like Jesus' disciples. We got to make ourselves available and not look at your diary and say, "Oh, I can't do that this week." If when you get a road accident, it's no good ringing the fire people and saying, "Can you come?" And they look at their calendar and say, "Oh no, we're booked up this week. We might be able to fit you in next." I'm afraid we got to be like Jesus was when he was on the earth. Quite often from where he was going, he would turn around and go the opposite way just to help somebody. And that is what we got to get to, is get to the point where we are none of self and all of Christ. Because all the time there's still us in the way. That's a blockage. And we got to get rid of the blockages before Christ can use us properly. I got Keith to play me a song that I found really helpful when I found out that Lorraine was in heaven. So I'll just get Keith to play it through and the words will come up on the screen, I hope.
He said to me he wanted to be near to me. He said he never wanted to be out of my sight. But it's too late to give this boy my love tonight. Please wait at the gate of heaven for me, Terry. He said to me he wanted to be close by my side. We had a quarrel, I was untrue on the night he died. And it's too late to tell this boy how great he was. Please wait at the gate of heaven for me, Terry. He rode into the night, accelerated his motorbike. I cried to him in fright, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. He said to me, you are the one I want to be with. He said to me, you are the one whom my love I shall give. One day he'll know how hard I prayed for him to live. Please wait at the gate of heaven for me, Terry. me.